sort of education on what a whitewater park is, and get us kind of all the same place before we start. I always sort of start off with this slide because I think everybody comes in with a conception about what a whitewater park is and what it does, and it always needs to be tempered from one side or the other. I mean, people who don't want to see them are thinking, oh, it's a skateboard park on the river. And people who do want to see them are thinking, gosh, this is the most amazing thing, and we're going to put it in there bar none. You know, and where it really sits is somewhere in the middle. You know, we're building this in a natural environment. We're building in a place where there's aquatic habitat, where there's riparian habitat, where people live and have homes. And so, as we go through the design process, invariably it comes down to sort of these three priorities in the end anyway. We're trying to create this recreational amenity, and everybody gets that. The whitewater recreation draws people from around the country. It's fun to do. We're all very passionate about it, or many of us are very passionate about it. At the same time, we build it within a habitat, or a river system that needs to maintain its habitat. The fish need to be able to get up. That needs to encourage riparian growth and overbank shading and allow connectivity of these riparian species to go up and down the river. And so the environmental components of this design, you'll see that in some of the pictures that you see. Not this one, by the way, that's lovely in Dallas. But in the pictures that you see, you'll see that ingrained in the design process as well. And the last one that everybody worries about is, you're going to come build this thing, you're going to flood me out of business, and I don't want anything to do with that in my town. But just bear in mind that what we're building is permitted within the regulations of the United States. It will have zero impact on the 100-year flood to your property. So when the big flood does come, what we can know reliably, and I'll show you some slides, is that it won't raise that flood 1/100th of a foot on your property. And so we go through a very extensive process and iterate that design to make sure that it's tempered by this need to be a good neighbor as well. Maybe this will actually advance the slide. It does. And so what are we doing? I mean, in essence, we're going to create, and there is drop, and there is fun places on the river right now, and the canal right now, but what we want to do is create a focal point for that. And it's a community focal point, and you'll see that a lot in the slides too. We're trying to create something that's fun for us as kayakers, that's fun for people who come to watch, for people who come to festivals. What research has shown is something like 1 out of 7 to 1 out of 10 people actually get wet in a whitewater park. Most people that come to it come to watch, come to picnic. You know, in the case where we put this on the campus, it's a place to sit and study or hang out with your friends or get away from the bustle that's going on and the stress that's going on campus. At the same time, it's a place to hold competitions that people come to watch and draw people and sort of brand your towns as a destination for this type of recreation. This is a park we did in New Zealand, by the way. It's part of a lawsuit, actually. They sued for lost whitewater, and we built a whitewater park for that money. So, and so the reason we're typically there, barring a convenient lawsuit, is the economic impact that these parks bring. And it actually surprised me, because I spent 15 years living in the back of a car, kayaking all over the world, right? And in terms of economic impact, I'm not the ideal case study, and neither were any of my friends, for the record. But at the end of the day, when you actually do this survey data, what you find out is some percentage, like 20% of people who go to whitewater parks to paddle, stay overnight and do it again. And so you get this hotel business, you get this restaurant business, and when you start to add up, start using survey data, which is the gold standard for this, it's millions of dollars per year in economic impact. This park in Golden, Colorado cost about $250,000 to build originally back in the 70s, and it gets about $2.2 million a year in economic impact. So it's a huge driver for the town. You know, when you fly into Denver, you see the big sign, "Welcome to Denver, home of the Golden Whitewater Park." It's got a big picture there, and Coors plant's right next to it. So it's something that you see a lot of, and it really is an impact. Vail and Breckenridge, Vail's the kind of case study for it all, because it was estimated to have about $1 million in impact, but they hosted TEPA, which is now the GoPro Mountain Games, and it's about $3.5 million a year in economic impact. It's a huge event. That park only runs about 6 weeks of the year. I mean, essentially, we're all skiing, that starts to melt, water runs for 6 more weeks, and then it's dry. There's no more coming. So that park is a very short season, but a very big impact. And then the last part is really about branding, and I think for Kearney, that's a big deal, right? At the end of the day, you're trying, in terms of creating tourism in your town, you're trying in part to get people to come off the highway here and spend the night here and learn about your community and be a part of your community and leave tourist dollars behind in your community. In Reno, what they found was when they built this, that it had about $1 million in free advertising in the first 6 months. To them, much like a whitewater park in Nebraska, it was mind-blowing. It's flat, it's a gambling town. It's not on brand, but at the same time, they've created this park that everybody started talking about. So CNN, Good Morning America, Christian Science Monitor, New York Times, all profiling what happened in that town. And then, obviously, with the pub parks, there's a tremendous impact there, about $37 million a year, and about 350 jobs in Charlotte for the Whitewater Park that was built there, the pumped one. That's kind of a different beast than what we're looking at. I said this earlier today. I mostly put this picture in because it's a beautiful shot, I think. But this is, again, the park in New Zealand that we did. We built these from natural, native materials that are mined from the area. It's natural rock, grounded together in the base of the river. For the most part, what we hear from people is, I can't believe that was built. The first couple of years they look at it, you can see the ground between the rocks and things, and you think, that's a whitewater park. But years into the future, that fills in with cobble and moss and things like that, algae. And what you're really seeing is more of a, because we do design it to use the river's natural morphology, you start to see something that looks more and more like the river. People are surprised when you go to Boulder Creek. They can't believe that they're actually in the Whitewater Park. They think you're just tubing in a natural river. And the last thing we try and do, and you'll see this a little bit, but we try and create a design that's not just a river design, but also a park design. And usually, right now, we're in the preliminary stages of that, and so we'll bring a landscape architect in as we move forward. But the idea is to create something that invites all kinds of people. It's a place where kids can play in the sand, make sand castles and hang out in the eddies, where you can learn to kayak, where you can float through on a tube, where you can float through on a raft, where you can have a river festival for people who don't paddle. And so part of that is just that people are amazed by the fact that there's a whitewater park, and part of that is that we design it to be fun for all these different groups and to add in these features, whether it be natural play features or festival areas and things like that. I put this in to brag because I modeled that the 100-year flood would be there, and then we ran the 100-year flood, and it came right into the spot where we modeled it at. So this goes to my earlier point that we designed these to not flood your homes. And so in this park, we had the ability to run the park at the 100-year flood, which I did for fun and make it live epic. And so we ran, I think, 10,000 CFS through this park. And you can see where the rock armoring is here that we put in. It came in within a foot of that, and it had a foot of safety margin on that. So again, it's a very accurate thing. When we talk about building a park in your town, we take this task very seriously. And again, this goes to our earlier discussion about habitat. I thought I'd walk you through a little bit a park that we did. This was a park that I was brought down to in San Marcos, Texas, by a friend who runs a kayak program down there. This is actually the guy I was telling you about. And they broke their dam. Actually, the kayakers thought they had broken it. They were all afraid because they apparently strapped something on there to make a wave before we did the park. And they strapped it on there one day, and the dam broke. So they were like, oh, hush, hush, come down and help us fix this. And so we talked to the town manager, and they're like, don't tell them we did it. But of course, the dam had eroded over a number of years. But we came in and basically said, look, we can fix this. The Lions Club down there does tubing, and that's their main fundraiser. And so they run literally thousands of tubes down this river near Austin, Texas. And so they wanted us to fix it the way it was, and we wanted to do a whitewater park again. So we came in and radically changed it. I mean, you look at the overbank there, we opened the river up so that you could come down to the river and see the river from anywhere in the park. It was if you were up here before at a picnic shelter, you didn't know the river was there unless you came down that stairway there. They had concrete bags all along this side to sort of separate the river from the parking area. So we brought in natural marble. We dried it out. There were some endangered species there, and so we transplanted those. And then we reconstructed the dam, and then went over it with natural marble to create kind of a natural finish to it. This is what I always tell the town council at the grand opening. They were a little bit against it, a little bit for it, and then at the grand opening they all jumped in the river. They were so excited. So I challenge all the town councils to do that. So I didn't say that to the mayor today, though. And so we built 3 drops out of 1. That's the top drop where that dam was. And it's great fun. It's 72-degree water. It's crystal clear, not this day, but soon thereafter. I'm on the 3rd drop now, and there's 2 drops there. And it was incredibly successful, and this is a great park to look at in the sense that this is very similar to what we're looking at doing in this community in terms of how much flow rate you have and sort of size of the river and finish of the river that we would use. They had so much success they actually brought lights in, so they can use it at night. They didn't have enough capacity in the first few years, and they had to hire some new rangers to help police the area. But we talked a little bit about how that other park is being used. This whole park is 3 drops, and I'm standing at the downstream end, and the upstream end's right up there. And so people continually loop this on tubes all day long while you're there paddling. The U.S. team does training camps there in the winter because it's warmer, and they held the Olympic qualifiers there a couple of years, and so Olympic qualifiers, you go to Olympic trials there a couple of years, and so it has a real significant presence in that sort of southwestern part of the country. Has an impact. So anyway, jumping to this part, we actually looked at a huge amount of Turkey Creek and this Kearney Canal, but focused in on 3 sites, and the one is up at the university in the Kearney Canal right near the outfall from the hydro structure. We also looked at Yanni Park in terms of looking at maybe a pump option, more to put that on the table than to seriously study it, but make you aware that it's there, and that's a possibility if the other ones don't work out. And then this Turkey Creek down here is Second Avenue in terms of using the combined flow of those two. When you look at the flows in the canal, you're in that, this is your range for San Marcos right here. And so you're just a little bit above what that San Marcos range was. And it's, when you look at very efficient concrete courses, they're actually up here in the 400 to 500 range. And then some of these Colorado parks that you go to are actually more like 2,000 to 5,000 CFS. So they're a lot more water, and that's where you see the big surf waves and that sort of a thing. So we're looking at when we started to compute the sort of available power to this Whitewater Park, because the park is drop and flow, which is power. When we drop and flow rate is power, I guess. When we started looking at available power for the park, you're kind of in that national, regional attraction range as opposed to sort of international. It's not going to be a huge Wi-Fi boat, but it's going to be a park that's a lot of fun and consistently runs. So we looked at a stretch, and unfortunately with this picture, I probably picked the wrong one, but from behind this bridge, there's a depositional area below where the outfall is from this hydro, and from that reach downstream to below where I'm standing on the bridge was the first area we identified. And there's some things we loved about this site. I mean, one, it's got the slope more than anywhere else in the reach that we saw, it doesn't have flooding. It's not a big issue for flooding coming through in terms of 100-year flood or things like that. It's also right in the middle of your #1 demographic. I mean, it's right on campus. There's tons of kids there that are the right age that take up paddling. It's in terms of the potential to create a park setting here, over 1,000 feet. This really had the most potential. And so I was very excited about this. There's a ton of political hurdles to this. It's owned by one company. The university is a different company. The town has its parks department, and so there's a lot to sort out with this. And the political minutia of that and where that goes is still a challenge. And so it's not clear that this site is the ideal one, but we did want to put it on the table as something to do. And so here's that outfall structure that is this thing in the background. And then where it actually starts varies, but right now there's an existing road grade coming down here. But we also envision trails along the river level, and so when you're down in the river, you don't have to climb up and out every time you want to go back up to the start. We create this lower area, and from a park standpoint, that seemed very important to us as well, because we've all been students, and it's stressful, and you live in this sort of concrete environment of libraries and dorms and classes and back and forth, and so we wanted to create a place as well on campus where you were down and away from all that, out of the wind, out of the, sort of more in a natural state than on a campus. We wanted to create something that was about 1,000 feet long, and so it finishes long before this underpass, which some people identified as a safety risk. I don't think at the end of this project that will be a safety risk, but the idea was, let's create something self-contained here so that people can loop it right here and part in it. There's 4 major drops, but then a significant amount of sort of features, whether they be midstream boulders or eddies that are created along the sides as you go down. And the sort of section of that, you can see this trail is actually quite narrow because of the constraints that are there. There's this sort of channel in the middle, which would be about the same width as it is now, but obviously the current being narrowed and made deeper. And then that river level trail that would go up and down, as well as trails on the top. And then we contemplated as well ADA access down to the river as well. So this channel, in our study, if you look in the appendix, we actually looked at doing this in concrete, which is much more efficient. So at that slope, at that flow rate, you'd expect a more powerful course in concrete. The rock finish may be a better fit in terms of what folks are looking for, and it's also a little more affordable, it's about half the price, a little bit more than half the price. And so So there's a couple options that are shown in the study for that. And if it has water, I'm going to talk them out of that. Sorry about that. Use water. Yanni Park was the other one we looked at. And the idea was to create a pump park using, a pump park is like a fountain, right? You need a sump that the water goes to at the end of the day. And you pump it up and it goes in a circle. And so we did one in Oklahoma City. It was about a $55 million whitewater park. It's a big. Some people from this town have actually been down there paddling on. It was a bigger thing than what we're looking at for this one. This one we're looking at one that's more Kearney sized in terms of it's about 100 meters long, which is about there's actually 3 channels in Oklahoma City, and so this is about the third the size of one of those channels. And it serves a couple of purposes, and we have a couple of videos we can share with you on this. But the idea is you can turn it on and do all kinds of kayaking. It's very efficient because it's concrete. The obstacles are movable, so you can reconfigure it in different configurations. And it creates a great place to kayak, to surf, to do a number of things. And it only drops about 6 feet, so operationally it's affordable to pump compared to an Oklahoma City or someplace like that. And a very adaptable product. So you could have races, you could have freestyle, you could have just recreational paddling or tubing or what have you. Its biggest thing, and the reason we originally designed it, was to be a swiftwater rescue training course. So this is something where first responders don't really have any place in the United States that they can train for swiftwater rescue. And in the places that they can train, they often can't train in very realistic scenarios. They're in a river. It's about as dangerous to train as it is to do a real swiftwater rescue. And so you can't put a car in a real river, and we're not very reliable anyway. So we've created something where this car has been prepared to do exactly what it does. It's rolled in, it's strapped down, it's bolted down, and then you do the training. We also do slow flooding scenarios, we do rope work, we do self-rescues. We can go through all these scenarios that are very realistic, and we can do it during the daytime and at night, because if they get into trouble or start to drown, we can shut it off, and 2 minutes later it's finished. And so this was an option for Yanni Park that we looked at in a very cursory way. That's what it looks like. So you can see the pump station over there, and then it just goes back into a pond on this side. This one actually has what we call a flood simulator in the middle, which is not something we thought about. And so it's just something to keep in your mind as you move forward, but it's not something that anybody's really expressed an interest in. It's about a $4 to $6 million bill once we actually get into that. The Turkey Creek site, you can see 2nd Avenue here. It begins just upstream of 2nd Avenue and goes down to here, right? Which is where the new takeout for the river trail was just created. And so you can see that's the takeout that was created. And so one drop structure just above, and actually I've talked to you earlier, we moved it above that takeout area. So just above that takeout area, and then the upstream one would be just above the pedestrian bridge on the upstream side of 2nd Avenue. There's not a lot of drop in this area, and that's why these are so spread out. You need to put them closer together, you need more slope. And so we would also create, there is some momentum there that we can use, and so we would create some character in there in terms of eddies and rocks and boulders. And then on top of that, and this is where the budget gets a little changeable. You know, one idea is to do the minimum you can to have your whitewater park, and the other idea is to actually create a river park down here. And so at a minimum, it's kind of a $500,000 project to get in there and make the changes. If we did go to town hall and say, look, we want to create something with trails on both sides and a walking loop and pedestrian bridges, then that becomes a bigger project. But something that would fit in very well and is also very feasible. You want to do river work first, but as things go forward, you can create sort of a very neat riparian kind of park. It's down by the river on a reliable basis as well. This is about what they look like. This is actually behind my house, which is why it has log gates for the record. So we have a little play feature there we call the October hole. This is actually ditch water, so it comes in right there and runs for about 100 yards and goes out down here. And so, you know, similar idea, one big drop there, and then there's a smaller drop down below, and then lots of eddies and things. So it's not, you know, like I said, it's not a Hawaii 5.0. You're not stand-up surfing with the wave over your shoulders or anything. But at the same time, we ran a club with about 40 kids. This flooded away. The river's now about 400 yards wide there. or 200 yards wide there, but before the flood, this had a club with 40 kids that went every week. We did a little race. There was a kids club, and then people came from Fort Collins and Denver in the late summer to serve this all the way until October, which is how it kind of stayed. So it was quite a popular spot, and it proved to be a very popular spot as well. So, and this one kind of at a minimum about that $430,000 level, so it's a cheaper price. It's about half the length and about half the cost of that. Of the park that we looked at the university. So I think that is it. Are there any questions? Or yeah.
So I think it's a lot of narrow. Would you narrow it down at all? I mean, is there any other ways to speed it up besides like dropping it?
It would be narrowed, especially if you go to the Kearney Canal, you could wade across it in places. And so the idea is, and in fact, when you look at this pump park scenario, if we took everything out, you can wade across it too. It's about that deep. And so the idea is you create these pinch points that hold the water upstream to make it deeper, and then create the chutes and ladders that become your whitewater park. So, and we do that with hydraulic models to sort of scale them, and then there's some adjustment in the field after we get it running.
You were mentioning earlier today that the depth for a lot of that, you're looking at around 4 feet, is what you're factoring.
Exactly, yeah. And so, when it goes down one of the chutes, it actually gets quite shallow because it speeds up. It's very fast, faster water, shallower. But the average sort of depth between the drops would be about 4 feet, 4 to 6 feet. In the natural scenario, it actually gets deeper in the middle because it's scoured. It creates a scour pool there, and so we shape for that, and then armor the bottom of that. Otherwise, there's some settling that we build. So we designed for that. It's there. But people, we swim in the one at our house. Yeah.
With the $4 or $5 million one that you consider putting in the Yanni Park, do you know how much financial contribution you get from state agencies, like National Guard, or maybe like Kearney or something like that? Do you know how much revenue that would bring into that park then? Because that's a pretty big price tag.
It is a big price tag, and with something like that, particularly because it has this swiftwater rescue component. Most people that go to build those chase grant money. You're looking at something that's you wouldn't just be training your swiftwater rescue department, you'd be training probably a huge portion of the Midwest swiftwater rescue training folks. And the one in Oklahoma City, for example, was funded by Oklahoma Technical University because they use it as part of their Department of Homeland Security for training people for disasters. So, yeah, and so there's some funding there, but once the funding has been raised, and there are other grants out there that you can use for it, because it is a community development thing. It is something that is a park, and so people tend to cobble together funding scenarios, and then at the end of the day, it operates profitably. So not so profitably that you invest in it to pay itself back, but enough that you don't have an anchor around your neck once it's built. So yeah.
How much was the first one? The university?
If done in rock, it's about $1.25 million, 1.25 million, and then if done in the concrete, which is a little more efficient, then you're looking at more like a little over $2 million. So right in that range, and that includes contingencies and design. One of the things that's sort of an unknown that you pointed out today, we put in typical numbers for the concrete work and stuff, but there's some unknown within those banks, like even with the trigger crack. And so in that scenario, when you look at this wall, these walls, we need to have a geotechnical structural look at that. That can make the cost go up and down.
Does your cost include the trail along there?
It does, yeah. And so we kind of went through the path. You can see the paths in there as well. The construction access ramp, you kind of run through all the typical things that we see in a construction project, permits, things like that. So, yeah.
How was the reception today?
I'll let you talk politics.
It was an extremely constructive meeting, and we walked away from it with a pretty clear direction on what the remaining questions are. I would say that certainly the meeting went back and forth, but it ended extremely positively. So I wouldn't. I'm sorry?
Receptivity?
I would say there's some concerns about liability still that we need to answer, and we intend to do that. So I wouldn't walk out of here with the assumption that any of this is going to start happening tomorrow, but we're going to continue on, and that was via agreement with all parties in the room. So NPPD owns that land, and they get to decide what the rules are and what the concerns are. And we certainly would want the same right if we owned the land too. So we're going to answer and satisfy any concerns that they have, and that's their right, and we respect that completely. So.
In regard to that, do you have any statistical data on liability for the other parks like this that you've seen?
I can't hear you very well.
Would you have any statistical data on accident history or anything like that on other parts of the scale?
I don't have any statistical data, but it's not an injury-prone thing. We don't see, the phone's not ringing up about people being there, and there's never been a lawsuit really, in my knowledge. Like that. We do see bumps and bruises. People look down for a run through, they hit their shins or things like that. But as a rule, we're able to design out the drowning hazard, and people can drown in a lot of scenarios, but we design out the drowning hazard.
That is what I wanted to hear. Design out the drowning hazard.
And so we take out, for example, foot traffic ability, and we take out the ability for trees to get stuck, and if they do, it's maintained so they're gone. And there's not pinning hazards, there's not things like that. So it's something we can go and engineer to some degree.
So moving forward, what's your time frame as far as something? Say you got to agree with that, do something like that. How long of a time frame are you looking there versus down by Central the Second on the down there on that area like that? How long does that typically take to build something like that?
So next steps are obviously political, right? We need to reach consensus on which site. You all need to reach consensus, and I think the city needs to reach consensus on which site is most favorable, and sort of get those permissions in place. Fundraising is also the next step, to raise that money to go build that. We have seen parks both ways, where they raise the entire funding or just the design funding, and then we design while they raise the construction funding. But once we actually are said, somebody says go design the rest, there's another phase there where we'll be back and forth, and we go in front of the same group in fact, saying here's the design we have, and preliminarily until we get buy-in on the design. And the engineering goes in kind of in parallel. That's about a 6 to 9 month engineering and design phase, including permits. And then we're able to go to construction. And construction is typically, for this upper one, probably about a 4.5 month construction, 4.5 to 6 month construction window, depending on how it's done. For the lower one, it'd be quicker, more like a 3 month.
To add to that, does that matter if water's flowing there? Obviously, there's no water coming out from the park to the base of that. So do you work during that time frame, or do you start to get close to the winter fall?
The answer is yes and no. If we can get out of working with water in the river, we do. And if the river's running, we do water control, which is expensive. But it's very feasible. So.
Do you work with the winter months?
We can. Concrete work is limited by temperature. And so we need to look at windows when that's done. But, typically it works out. The rainbow, for example, we don't run. And you're just waiting for those dry days to get to 30 degrees. Other questions? Yeah.
Wouldn't your long-term O&M be quite a bit cheaper on the first option than the county park option?
Yes. Yeah. That first option has a lot. There's a lot of benefits there. When you sort of walk around and you say, gosh, what's going on in Kearney? That top one is a great option. That's a great option no matter what town you're in. That's a great option. So, yeah.
Would you say the first option has the greatest potential for economic returns for our community?
I would say so. Yeah, that's a great. When you visualize where you want to build a whitewater park, this falls in my top grouping for sure. There's a lot going on there, and what it brings to that university. I don't want to speak for the university, but what it brings to that university as well, in terms of bringing students into this community, which has a huge economic impact. comparison to a tourist, but also in terms of keeping that brain trust in this town, which is a big deal too. It's a play where you live thing for the sort of latest generation, right? There's a lot happening there. So.
Do you ever see like baby steps? And I mean, you're taking that already, obviously, but the Second Avenue piece, which would be a little more economical, maybe not quite as exciting, but I mean, is that help sell it for a bigger project like First, or?
We do see a lot of projects happen in phases. Typically, people settle on a site as opposed to two sites, and that doesn't mean that's what you guys need to do, but typically they do. And so the phases become, let's do this section, or let's do the river work first and do the park part later, or we look at it in a bunch of different ways. So there's different ways to do it. A lot of times it's funding in different segments or through different funding bodies, so the river's done through one, the rest through another, things like that.
So this could be split like in half, or we could accomplish some of it if we overcame the political hurdles?
Yes, there's ways to phase this, and we have to strategically think about the best way. So I don't know if it would be in half or river work first and then park work or things like that, but there's ways to split that up. So I think what we would need to do as well at some point in time is take it forward to the next step of engineering and really start to understand these walls and what those costs are. Then there's some things to get in. So, it's not hard to solve that engineering problem, but it can be costly.
Apparently there's car bodies there, potentially like there is elsewhere, so that seems to be a popular thing at some point in the past.
Detroit riprap is called. So, but anyway, usually a geotech would assume worst case scenario in that scenario for the soils, and so walls may be thicker or higher, things like that.
Back to that previous slide, is that just going to be a simple beginner run? Family friendly?
This would be very family friendly, yeah. I think everybody in the room would climb into a tube and tube down that. I'm a big believer in helmets and life jackets. I think we should all wear them, but I wouldn't balk at the idea of jumping into that within a year or two. And today or tomorrow or the next day, if this was done, nobody would be saying that's intimidating or hard. There's a lot that's fun to do there. Certainly a lot more fun than a lot of things that we were on in the Roman before. Here now, which I love, by the way, but it didn't have that sort of pushy, defined eddies and things like that are there. This is a great club. This is a great club, club level whitewater club, basically. When it gets more efficient is when you start to see, this is the same thing, right? It's about the same slope and about the same drop, but you get a lot more power with the concrete. So that's another thing to think about in terms of scenarios. But aesthetically, this is more natural and more pleasing.
Initially, when Scott first came back with some of the preliminary stuff, I think he was leaning more toward the concrete channel and the rapid blocks and that kind of thing, because it is more efficient. You can produce more power, and in terms of pure whitewater performance, there's no question it's a better option. But we actually, as a board, came back and asked him to go with the natural because we feel like it lends more to the community in terms of aesthetics. It provides that snapshot that people remember when they visit this town. There's no question it would be on the cover of every Kearney catalog and UNK catalog for the rest of this century. And that's something that the rapid block feature, although providing better performance whitewater, I don't think would bring to the table. So we can debate whether that was the right decision or not, but that was the decision we asked Mr. Shipley to make, because each one of those options costs us money to ask him to look at too. So we chose with our limited resources to have him really focus on the more natural look. So.
In terms of sourcing rock, we're not exactly going for lots of rock around here.
Yeah.
Where do you imagine something like that to come from?
And we haven't looked at that yet, in the next phase, but it's typically quarry rock. If you're shipping it a long distance, it's pricier. We haven't looked at that yet, so that may impact the price that you're looking at. But it's big rock. I mean, these are 3-foot diameter, bigger boulders that are placed along that river. And the armoring can be different sizes depending on velocities, but the walls are typically that big rock. So we would need to look at that in the cost of And you have had your hand up.
In other projects that you engineered, have you been required or have you incorporated anything that could be considered an environmental amenity, such as filter strips or wetlands or sumps or something that would, allow massive filtration of runoff water? In other words, keeping soil out of the stream, which is a good thing to do anyway. Is there ways, or have you done this in other places?
We have. In fact, we also do river restoration. So we specialize in engineered wetlands, and we're building a tremendous amount of habitat right now in a lot of the parks that we're doing. It becomes much harder to do in this scenario. And so in some ways it's a different project than what we're looking at in this case, because what you're really trying to do is create a more natural kind of multi-stage river with a connected floodplain and places for the water, essentially to spread out and distribute or deposit or what have you. But when you have a narrow incised channel like this with very little lateral spread to it, it's very difficult to do any of those treatments. In fact, if we built them, they probably wouldn't function very well in this scenario. So once you get down towards the county park, where it's a little slower, if that was a priority, that would be quite easy to do. And you do, in fact, see some riparian grasses and things like that along the banks. And as you get into Shipley Creek, it's obviously got a more connected floodplain there. But in this scenario, it's quite hard to.
The reason I asked that question was the Natural Resource District here. This is part of what they do, preventing erosion, cleaning up water, and cleaning streams. And this seems like this is an opportunity to do two things at once, which would allow money to come from another source to do the things that Whitewater would like to see done. But at the same time, it's an environmental asset for the entire community to have a clean stream.
No, I totally agree with that. And if you look at, for example, I don't know what's upstream of those, but that's probably street water coming right into the creek at that point. In some places, there's settling ponds before those. In some places, depending on historically when it was built, those tend to run right into it. So you do have the sedimentation issue that you're talking about, and it does affect habitat downstream. So I think it's a good point. The thing I could come back to is it's quite hard to do right here. If I had the money, I wouldn't do it right here. I would do that somewhere else. Which is not to say it's not a part of other Whitewater Park projects. It is, but it's not part of this one, I think, in this location. At Turkey Creek, we can look at something different.
One of the issues we have with the Second Avenue corridor, but really as much, and it might tie into what you're talking about, we've had discussions with some water groups that deal with Rose Sanctuary downstream, and the amount of garbage that's going into the river from the drainage channels along Second Avenue is impressive. Do you have solutions to try to capture that stuff before it makes it into the river and ends up in Omaha or anything along that line? We've done a little bit of Google work and tried to come up with at least an idea stream on different concepts. But do you have something to address that specifically?
There are ways to address that, but they're more, it's a municipal project. You're treating that stormwater before it comes out for some sort of a retention pond, and then filtering it before it comes out, and you can clean out those. It'll deposit as it settles, as it distills, right? But it doesn't. The hardest place to get it to distill is after it's. So once it leaves there, right now, instead of treating that amount of water, I'm treating that amount of water.
I don't know that it's a water quality issue as much, although I think that can always improve. But it's really it's garbage. It's soda cans and 32-ounce super slurp cups and candy wrappers and that sort of thing, and there's just a huge volume of it.
And again, if you can catch it while it's still there instead of out here, that's a much better solution to it. And that's typically where you point people to these things. And then once you start to look at how do we clean it once it's in here, you don't do it in the narrow, confined, high velocity spaces. You do it when it goes downstream, and it's more settled. And so, but But there are ways to do that. And the bigger thing is, can you create functioning habitat that's out there as well? So one thing is catch it before it goes out there. Two, and deal with making sure that you have a quiet ecosystem that's functional and a riparian system that's functional and connected. And that's where you really start to see these benefits. So, yeah, it's a tough problem. I mean, if you can solve it as a city, we'll solve it.
Did you work on Concourse Park?
I did not work on that one, no.
You didn't?
No.
Are you familiar with right in front of the REI store? There's like a, I don't know what it is. It's, you know, there's the river channel, and then there's a little diversion portion, and like all the garbage ends up in there, or at least it seems that way.
Right.
Was that designed on purpose as far as you know?
It wasn't. No, that's actually a historical diversion, and so they kept half the diversion and then built the Whitewater Park around the other half for specific value, the historical value of that dam. It's recently changed, by the way, and I haven't seen it since it changed, but it's different now. The other one we saw in London on the Thames River when we were there was just big catchers and nets out in that. It's very slow moving river by then, but they were all full of plastic bottles, so it tells you how many were going out to sea before that. And so it's something people are attacking from all sides, but it's a tough nut to crack for sure.
Are there fundraising consultants to help raise money from the public sector, private sector?
There are.
Grants to write, is there somebody that's knowledgeable about this stuff?
There are people like that, and choose wisely. So on that, because it's something where you're sort of either A, paying a lot of money for that, or B, they're working at risk, and I think the ones who work at risk tend to go out of business, and because it's a hard game to win at. And so most successful grant writing things are this committee writing those grants and writing those grants. And if you can find somebody who's successfully done it, you know, someone who built the school in your community, or who's very well connected in that world, that's the person that you want to find, because they know which foundations specialize in which things and which grants. So you're going to somebody who's passionate about river issues or educational issues or water quality issues or recreation, and writing the grant to them is very in line with their mission statement. And so that's what I recommend. We have somebody like that in Denver that we talk to. It's like, oh, you know, try the Daniels Foundation. They're very interested in kids groups. You know, or try this one. And N Street, he's very interested in the M Street page where our Paralympic team to have boats for training in the boat. So they're very interested in Paralympics things. So identifying the right grants and going after them is kind of the trick there. So usually it's a lot of some committee here writing things is my advice. So.
And have you seen any successful public campaigns where people raise money with local donors versus grants?
Local donors tend to be, I mean, at that $1 million price tag, local donors tend to be enough to get you to the stage where you have the information you need to write the grant. And then the strategies need to go from that. But I'd never written a grant before, and when our town flooded, I wrote a grant $1 million for our park in Park, and that was my first one, you know. And in the end, we wrote about $9.5 million worth of grants, and we won $4.5 million from that town. And so, and a lot of that after we'd written the first one was already done, right? Because the part that's different between each grant that we filled in. And so, and the other part of that was relationships. You know, we put them in the right places, and we communicated with those people before we did. And some of them were quite frank. You can lie, but I don't think I would do it if I were you. Others were like, tell us more, we want to know about this. And, you know, it was very successful in that way. So, there's also, you know, for example, if we bring in, this is also conducive to swiftwater rescue training. We do have a ramp down for cars. We do have a controllable amount of water, a reasonable amount of water, I guess. So when you start looking at grants, be creative about how to be used. You know, there's a college here, that's a new thing. There's this idea of doing swiftwater rescue that brings in FEMA grants and things like that. So there's some heavy hitters out there that are very interested in what this fund will do. Yeah.
After completion of that project, would the stream be wider, or is that not the width it would be, or?
It would be.
And how far west would the trail go?
So in our design, which is right there, this is the outfall. So we're just where the road comes down is roughly where I'm assuming that we'll start. I may move downstream because we can't back water upstream. And then the finish would be, this is 24th Street, is that what that is? The finish would be just above that. And there's been talk about, can you create this connectivity for the river trail downstream, and also with the connectivity with the bike trail that's there. And so that would probably be phase 2, but this one is sort of contemplated in this immediate area. It's about 1,000 feet long, which is about an average length for marijuana parks. So
I'm saying the actual width of the stream, is it gonna be about the same as it is now, or?
it will be, yeah. And it'll be deeper, and then when you actually look at the drop structures themselves, it gets narrower. It's, where we constrict it and send it over something, it gets narrower. But the boats will go straight through that part, and then there'll be wide edges that peel out into and things like that. But your current profile should be about that wide. That's a very similar amount of flow, so something along those lines. And a little wider at the top, because we won't be as deep at the top as we move away from the hydro plant. So just a little variety as well. All right. Well, thank you all for coming, and let us know what you can do to help.
Any last questions? I think Mr. Shipley has to travel tonight, so I don't think he's going to be sticking around too long afterwards. So if something pops up, I guess, grab him quickly here. I just want to say thank you very much to everybody for coming tonight. Thank you especially to those of you who are on the board that have been working on this way more time than you got to give.